All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving into something pretty fascinating, and I think it's something we can all relate to. It's all about how good we are at actually knowing what we know.
Yeah, like how do we even judge that?
Exactly. Like, how do you know if you really understand something? So, we're specifically going to look at the connection between the effort you put into learning something and how confident you feel about remembering it later.
Yeah, those monitoring judgments researchers talk about.
Exactly, those monitoring judgments. And for this deep dive, we have a really cool resource, a meta-analysis.
Oh, awesome. So like a study of studies?
Yeah, pretty much. It's like a super study. It's where researchers have gathered data from a ton of individual studies on this specific topic, and then they've crunched all those numbers together to give us a really big picture of how effort and memory confidence are actually connected.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. So our goal today is to understand what this massive amount of research tells us about, like how your feeling of effort while you're learning something, shapes your belief in your future memory. And then we want to think about what factors can actually change this relationship.
Right, because if we know that, then we can kind of hack our learning a little bit.
Totally. Yeah, hack your learning, exactly. Like ultimately this should help you understand like your own personal learning quirks, how your own brain works, and maybe even help you study smarter.
I like it. Let's do it.
Okay, let's jump in. What's the big overall finding, like the main takeaway from all of this research?
Okay, so the main trend, and this might be a little surprising, is that there's a small to medium negative connection between how much effort you put into learning something and how well you think you'll remember it.
Really?
Yeah, so this meta-analysis actually found an average correlation of around negative 0.355.
Wait, a negative correlation. So that means the harder I work to learn something, the less confident I am that I'll remember it later.
Yeah, that's basically it.
Huh. That seems a little counterintuitive.
It does, right. But there's a theory called the memorizing effort heuristic that tries to explain this. Basically, it says that we tend to believe that things that click easily, things that don't feel like a lot of effort to learn right now in the moment, are the things that will stick with us longer.
Okay, yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. It's like, oh, this is coming easily to me. It must be going into my long-term memory.
Exactly.
So my immediate experience of how easy or hard something feels is like the main piece of information I use to predict how well I'll remember it later.
Yes, and the research actually calls these judgments data-driven because your brain is basically taking a shortcut. It's using that immediate feeling of like how easy or hard it is to process the information as a way to guesstimate how well you'll be able to recall it later.
That's fascinating. So is this just something that adults do, or do kids do this too?
You know what's really interesting is that this negative correlation has been seen in lots of different age groups, even in kids as young as like 7 or 8.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, and it's been found across all sorts of different learning situations, from memorizing like word pairs to figuring out more complex problems.
Well, so it's a pretty consistent pattern then, like across ages and across all sorts of tasks.
Definitely a pretty consistent pattern, though there is a little twist.
Oh.
Yeah. So the meta-analysis suggested that this negative connection, it might not be as strong or it might not even be there at all in those really young children, like around that 7 to 8-year-old range.
Okay, interesting. So maybe younger kids, how hard they have to work doesn't make them automatically doubt themselves as much.
That's a possibility, yeah.
Maybe they haven't made that connection yet, or it's not as strong. So it seems like most of the time, effort is like a bit of a warning sign for us, at least in our own minds. Like it makes us less confident we'll remember something. But is it always the case? When does putting in more effort make us feel more confident?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. It's not always a negative correlation. That negative link isn't set in stone.
Hmm.
So when you're really focused on learning something, when it's really important to you for some reason, maybe it's high stakes, or you're just really genuinely interested in the topic, putting in more effort can actually lead to you feeling more confident.
Okay, that makes sense. It's not just about how easy it feels in the moment. It's also about how bad do I want to learn this thing?
Right, exactly.
How have researchers actually tested that, like shift in mindset?
Well, they've come up with some really interesting ways to test this. One way is by making the stuff they're asking people to learn seem more important, like by saying, you'll get more points for remembering certain items.
Oh, interesting. Like adding incentive?
Exactly. Yeah. Like
Oh,
really upping the stakes. They've also messed with like time pressure to see how that changes things. Because when you're under pressure, you have to think more strategically about where you put your effort.
hmm.
And another really cool thing they've done is giving the learners more of a sense of control by asking them how much effort they chose to put in, rather than just asking them, like, how much effort did this task require?
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not just like how hard did it feel? It's like how much did you choose to put in?
Exactly. Because
Hmm.
that feeling of choice, it can change the whole experience.
Yeah, I can see that. If I feel like I'm actively deciding to work harder on something because it matters to me, that effort probably feels more like a sign of my dedication, not just, how difficult the material is.
Right.
So what did they find when they did that, when they introduced those changes?
They found some really cool stuff. So when there were like higher stakes or when time was limited, that typical native connection that we talked
Ah,
about earlier between effort and how confident people felt, it got a lot weaker. And sometimes it actually disappeared completely.
wow, that's huge.
It is. And it suggests that people were shifting away from that automatic easy equals memorable feeling, and they were starting to engage in more goal-driven learning.
I see. So they were like, okay, it doesn't matter if this is hard. I'm going to learn it because I want to or I need to.
Exactly. Like they were probably focusing their effort on the things they thought were the most important or the most achievable given, the constraints of the situation.
Right, right. That makes sense. In the outline, you mentioned an experiment that involved facial expressions, and that sounded really weird.
Oh, yeah. It was a really interesting study. So they actually had students make a facial expression that's associated with effort, like furrowing their brows.
Oh, okay.
And just doing that simple physical act, it actually made people less confident about their memory.
Really? Just from making a face.
Yeah, which totally supports that initial, like, data-driven link we were talking about.
Mhm.
But here's where it gets even wilder. When they added time pressure to the same situation, the effect completely flipped. So instead of focusing on how hard everything felt, the students started prioritizing the easier items, the ones they thought they had a better chance of remembering overall.
Oh, wow. So the pressure made them think strategically.
Exactly. And it really shows how goal-driven behavior can override that immediate feeling of effort.
Wow, that is wild. Okay, so we've talked about the effort itself, we've talked about the learner's mindset. What about how researchers actually measure this effort? Does it matter how they're measuring it?
It really does. How they measure effort is super important. And studies typically use two main types of measures: objective measures and subjective measures.
Okay, so like objective versus subjective.
Right. So objective measures are things you can actually directly observe and record, like how much time somebody spends studying, how quickly they can answer a question, which is called response latency, or how many tries it takes them to perfectly learn something.
Okay, so it's like very concrete things that you can see and measure.
Exactly, yeah. Subjective measures, on the other hand, involve asking the learners themselves. Like, how much mental effort did you feel like you were putting in? Or how much effort did you consciously choose to invest in this?
Okay, so it's getting at their own experience of how hard they were working.
Exactly, yeah. It's all about their perception. And the researchers thought that those subjective ratings, they might be more strongly connected to how confident people felt about their memory, because both of them are based on, the person's own feelings and perceptions.
Right,
It's like self-report matches self-report.
exactly, yeah. So did they find that that was true?
Well, it was kind of true. The meta-analysis did find that when they first looked at the data, those subjective ratings of how much effort was required or invested, they did have a stronger connection to the monitoring judgments compared to the objective measures.
Okay.
But when they looked at multiple factors altogether, that difference became a lot less obvious. It wasn't as simple as they initially thought.
Oh, so it's more complicated than just that.
Way more complicated. So when they dug a bit deeper into the objective measures, they actually found that the amount of time somebody spends studying something, that tends to have a weaker connection to their memory judgments compared to how quickly they can retrieve information.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not about how much time I spend with it, it's about how fast I can pull that information out of my brain.
Exactly. And that makes sense. If you think about it, the immediate difficulty of recalling something, that plays a much bigger role in our confidence than just, like, how long we spent looking at it in the first place.
Right, right. Like if I'm struggling to remember something right now, even if I spent an hour studying it yesterday, I'm going to feel less confident.
Exactly. And they also found that those subjective ratings that really focused on choice, like did somebody actively choose to put in effort, those ratings actually showed a non-significant positive link with their confidence judgments.
Okay, so if I feel like I'm in control of how hard I'm working, I might actually feel more confident about remembering it.
Right, because you're like, I chose to put in this effort, so it must be important and I must be learning it well.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Now, we've been using this term monitoring judgments pretty generally,
Hmm.
but the outline mentioned that there are actually different types of these
Oh,
judgments.
yeah, there are a few.
So, does it matter, like when you're asking me to think about how well I'll remember something, does the timing of that matter?
It totally matters.
Yeah.
So there are predictions that you make before you're actually tested on something.
Yeah.
And researchers call those prospective judgments.
Okay. Like before you have to prove that you know it.
Exactly. So one example of those is judgments of learning, or JOLs.
JOLs.
Yeah, JOLs. And that's where you basically predict how well you'll remember something right after you've studied it.
Okay, so like, okay, I think I'll remember 80% of that list.
Exactly. Then there's feeling of knowing, or FOK judgments.
Defo case.
Yeah, FOKs. And that's where you're trying to guess if you would recognize the information, even if you can't recall it right now. Like if somebody gave you a multiple choice question, would you be able to pick the right answer, even if you can't remember it off the top of your head?
Okay.
And then there are ease of learning judgments, or EOLs.
EOLs.
Yeah, and those are where you're estimating how easy or hard something will be to learn in the first place before you've even started studying it.
Got it. So those are all before I've actually had to like pull the information out of my brain.
Yeah.
What about during the task or after the task?
Right, so during the task itself, you have what we call concurrent judgments.
Okay.
So this could be things like online confidence judgments, where you're asked to rate how sure you are about an answer you just gave, like right after you give the answer.
Right. Okay.
Or ease of solution judgments, where you're rating how easy or hard it felt to solve a problem, right in the middle of trying to solve it.
Okay.
Or even just your overall sense of like how accurate you think your performance is as you're going along. And then, of course, after the task is over, after the test is done, you have what are called retrospective judgments.
Okay.
And these can include things like those EOLs. But this time, you're making them after you've tried to learn something.
Oh, okay. So it's like how easy was it to learn now that you've actually gone through it?
Exactly. Or it could be like your overall judgment of how well you think you did on the test now that it's over.
Got it. So predicting beforehand, feeling confident in the moment, and reflecting afterward.
Yes.
Did the meta-analysis find any differences in how effort relates to those different types of judgments?
Yeah, they did. So they found that the overall negative connection that we've been talking about, it was present for all these different types of judgments.
Okay.
But it was noticeably weaker for those prospective JOLs, those predictions you make right after you study something, but before you've actually been tested on it.
Interesting. So maybe in that moment, right after studying, I'm a little more forgiving of the effort?
Maybe, but here's a really important finding. Those concurrent judgments, the ones you make while you're actually doing the task,
Yeah.
those showed a much stronger negative connection with effort.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So it's like the harder it feels to actually do the thing, the less confident I become, even more so than when I'm just making a prediction after studying.
exactly. And it suggests that we might rely more heavily on that immediate feeling of effort during a performance to judge how well we're doing and how well we think we'll do in the future.
Right, because you're in it, you're feeling it.
Yeah, it's real-time feedback.
Exactly. Okay, that makes sense. Now, we talked about when I'm making these judgments. What about what I'm actually learning? Does the type of task I'm doing make a difference in this whole effort confidence link?
Yeah, it totally does. The meta-analysis actually looked at different categories of tasks. They looked at problem-solving tasks. They looked at things like learning new words and memorizing pairs of words. And then they had this broad other category that included a bunch of stuff like, making medical diagnoses from information, or reading and understanding a text, or answering general knowledge questions.
Okay, so it's everything from memorizing vocabulary to like figuring out a logic puzzle?
Yeah, pretty much. And they found that there were some really interesting differences in how effort and confidence were linked across those different types of tasks.
Okay, like what?
So the big finding was that problem-solving tasks, those showed a much stronger negative connection between effort and monitoring judgments compared to word learning and those other tasks.
Interesting. So when I'm really like wrestling with a problem and it just feels really hard, I might be more likely to think I'm just not going to get this.
Right, and it makes sense if you think about it. Like when you're solving a problem, that feeling of effort might feel like a more direct and reliable indicator of how much you actually understand and how well you'll be able to do on similar problems in the future.
Okay. Yeah, because if I'm struggling to memorize a word pair, It might just mean I haven't seen those words together before.
Exactly. It could just be unfamiliar.
But if I'm struggling to solve a logic puzzle, it might feel like, oh, maybe I'm just not good at logic puzzles.
Right. Or maybe I don't have the skills to do this. So the type of challenge you're facing really influences how you interpret that feeling of effort.
Absolutely. Okay, so this meta-analysis looked at a lot of different things, a lot of different pieces of the puzzle. When they put it all together, what were the main takeaways?
So they did this really cool thing called a meta-regression.
A meta-regression.
Yeah, it's basically a way of statistically analyzing how multiple different factors are all influencing each other at the same time.
Okay.
And when they did that, some really important patterns came out. So first, those goal-driven approaches that we talked about, like incentives, time pressure, emphasizing choice, all of that stuff, those consistently and significantly weakened the negative connection between effort and monitoring judgments.
So basically, how I'm approaching the task and my motivation for doing it can really change how I interpret how hard it feels.
Totally. And another important finding was that the timing of when you make those judgments still mattered.
Okay.
So those predictions right after studying those JOLs, those continue to have a weaker negative connection with effort compared to the judgments that you make while you're actually in the middle of the task.
Right. So it seems like when I'm actually in the thick of it, that feeling of effort has a much bigger impact on my confidence.
It really does. And then the last big takeaway was that the type of task still mattered, even when they considered all those other factors. Problem-solving tasks, those still had that stronger negative relationship between effort and confidence.
Okay, so it's like, even if I'm motivated, even if I'm checking my understanding in the moment, if the problem itself is just really hard, that feeling of effort is going to make me more likely to doubt myself.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah,
But I think it's really helpful to be aware of that so we can try to manage those feelings of doubt.
absolutely. So what are some of the things that this research didn't cover, and what are some things that might be really interesting for future research?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one thing to keep in mind is that this meta-analysis really focused on research that's been formally published. So they didn't look at what's called gray literature, things like dissertations, conference papers, stuff like that.
Right.
And that can have a lot of interesting findings in it.
Right, right. It's like there might be more data out there.
Exactly. Yeah. And they also, they found all these factors that influence the relationship between effort and monitoring judgments. But we still need more research to understand why these things matter.
Right. Like we know the what, but we don't know the why.
Exactly. So for example, studies that follow the same individuals over time as they're learning different things and making judgments at different points, those could be super valuable.
Oh, yeah. Because instead of comparing different people doing different things, you're seeing how one person's judgments change in different learning situations.
Exactly.
Oh.
Another really fascinating area for future research is the actual shape of the relationship between effort and confidence. So this meta-analysis, it mostly found these linear relationships, like more effort, less confidence.
Right, right.
But some studies have actually found this more complex pattern, this like inverted U shape, especially when you look at study time.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that initially, spending more time studying might make you feel more confident, but after a certain point, if you keep struggling, even if you keep putting in more effort, your confidence might actually start to go down.
Oh, I've definitely experienced that. Like there's this point where it's just like banging your head against the wall and you just get more and more frustrated.
Exactly. Yeah, like it stops being helpful.
Mhm.
And then this meta-analysis also didn't directly examine whether effort is actually a good predictor of how well you'll do in the end, like how well you'll actually remember the information.
Right. It's one thing to feel confident. It's another thing to actually get it right.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then finally, they mentioned this idea of connecting this research with something called cognitive load theory.
Cognitive load theory, yeah.
And it basically says that there are different types of effort. There's effort that's like inherent to the material itself, like some things are just hard to learn. And then there's effort that's caused by things that are external, like bad instructions or just a confusing way of presenting the information.
Right, right. Like sometimes the problem isn't me, it's the teaching.
Exactly. And it would be really interesting to see how those different types of effort relate to both how well we learn and how confident we feel about our learning.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, so tons of food for thought for future research. But bringing it back to our listeners, what's the key takeaway from this deep dive into the world of effort and memory confidence?
I think the big takeaway is that while our gut feeling might be that things that are easy to learn are going to be easy to remember, and things that are hard to learn are going to be hard to remember, that's not always the most accurate way to judge our learning.
So I shouldn't necessarily trust that immediate feeling of, oh, this is easy, I've got it, or, oh, this is so hard, I'm never going to figure this out.
Exactly. Like the amount of effort you put in, it's definitely a signal your brain is using, but it's a signal that can be influenced by a lot of different things.
Right, right. It's not just the material itself, it's my mindset, it's the situation, it's all these different things.
Exactly. So things like your goals, your motivation, how important the material is to you, the type of stuff you're learning, and even when you decide to check your understanding, all of those things can change how that effort and confidence are connected.
This is so interesting. I'm thinking now about when do I feel more confident after really working hard at something? And when does that struggle just make me feel more doubtful?
Yeah, it's worth thinking about that. Like, what are those situations for you where effort seems to be a good sign, and where does it seem to be a bad sign?
Exactly. And that brings us to a final thought for you. Knowing all of this, knowing that how much effort something feels like it takes can really influence how you judge your own learning. How can you use that to your advantage?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? Like, how can you adjust your approach to get a better sense of what you really know and what you don't know?
Right.
So maybe that means thinking about setting really clear learning goals for yourself, or maybe it means building in like a self-testing, testing yourself while you're studying, not just at the end.
Well, that's interesting.
Or maybe it means really consciously paying attention to how much effort you're putting into different types of tasks and what that tells you. It's all about becoming more aware of how your own mind works when you're learning.
Absolutely. That self-awareness is so crucial. This has been a fascinating deep dive. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, keep thinking, keep learning, and keep diving deep.